Welcome to Midlife Reclaimed, the podcast for women ready to navigate midlife with more clarity, compassion, and energy. I'm Shannon A. Swales, psychologist, writer, doggy mama, and midlife woman walking this path alongside you. Twice a month, we explore real stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you move through chronic stress, overwhelm, and burnout so you can reclaim your voice, your boundaries, and your joy. Please remember what you hear here is general information, not a substitute for personal therapy. This isn't about midlife crisis, it's about midlife reclamation. So let's begin. Today, I'm joined by someone whose story will resonate deeply with so many of you walking the midlife burnout path. Michelle is in her mid-50s and describes herself as being on the other side of burnout. And that matters because what she shares isn't theory, it's lived experience. Michelle spent more than 14 years at Salesforce in high-pressure leadership and operational roles, working with complex digital transformations and global teams. Alongside that work, she became a passionate mental health advocate, co-founding a global mental health employee group, partnering with people and culture, and becoming a licensed mental health first aid instructor. Her impact was recognized with 2 global awards, Managers for Success and Women of Impact. But the chapter she brings to us today is far more human than any resume line. Michelle has lived through the slow unraveling of burnout, the exhaustion, the loss of identity, the pushing through that so many midlife women know too well. She's navigated big life transitions, quitting drinking, perimenopause and menopause, family pressures, and eventually redundancy. And from that place, she's rebuilt. Her newest network, Nostos Nest, is a space she created to bring together everything she's learned, the strategic, the personal, and the deeply human, to help others feel seen, supported, and empowered to return home to themselves. In this conversation, Michelle shares her story with honesty, insight, and a clarity that can only come from having walked through the storm and made it to the other side. So let's dive in. Hey, Michelle, welcome to Midlife Reclaimed. It's absolutely wonderful to finally have you here to have this really vital conversation. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I'd love the listeners, but also selfishly myself, getting to know, well, Michelle, like before the burnout, what were you doing? What was life like? Yeah, just like to get to know.
Okay. I'll give a little bit of the beginning, I guess, is important for
Mm.
the whole story, but I didn't have the easiest start. I was oldest of 6 in a single parent, chaotic household and a lot of heavy drinking in the environment. So by the age of 13, I was babysitting all my younger siblings, and my mum was working nights. And I left school and I left home at 16 and started working in the corporate world pretty early. And it felt like a completely different universe to where I came from. And everyone was super polished and educated, successful, and I was really impressed by it all, but I felt like an imposter. So that was, not the best start, really. And
Mm.
I'd grown up being responsible and learning that life was never easy. So working hard and just pushing through was second nature to me. So I just kept going through my career and managed to build a solid career, but I was just constantly surviving and proving myself and just wanting to prove that I was capable of anything that was in front of me. And I pretty much tied my entire sense of worth to who I became at work. And then in 2011, almost 15 years ago, I joined Salesforce, big tech company, and they were about 5,000 people at the time, and now it's close to 80,000. So the growth was huge, and so was the pace and the rate of change. Super exciting, but it was relentless. And then about 7 years ago, I had a huge career curveball that completely knocked my confidence. And I'd had curveballs before, but this was one that just really, it was like the last one I could handle, I think. And I felt lost in the system all of a sudden. And the company had grown a lot and it had changed and it had become a big corporate beast. And I realized that no matter how many hoops I jumped through, it wasn't about capability anymore. And at the same time, I didn't know this at the time, but perimenopause was probably starting. I was around 47, I think. And
Mm,
on top of that, there was always, stress from my family. I'd always had that feeling of responsibility for everyone, and every crisis, even if I was miles away, would weigh heavily on me. So all of that background and wiring kind of caught up with me. So when my
mm,
confidence shattered, I just felt like I wasn't doing enough and tried to push harder while
mm.
still doubting myself, and kind of lost my passion and motivation until I
Yeah,
crashed.
until you crashed, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing and so important to go back to those younger years, isn't it? To understand our adult years and where we land and end up. I know for my own journey in burnout, that was the case. I need to understand or link or connect it back to there because that's often where those things like our sense of responsibility,
Yeah.
like what we've learnt to survive or learnt
Yes.
to survive those circumstances, which yours very challenging. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and that we can then bring into our adult years that help, but then also hinder, like as
Yeah. And it's only really now that I'm on the other side of it, everything. Hindsight is a wonderful thing that I understand how, one of the things when I went through burnout was try and figure out how the hell did I get here,
yeah.
and tried to map back my career path and just my journey on what was it that actually got me here in the first place. So hard to do that when you're in the thick of it, but
100%. And that's such an important thing. This stuff we're not aware of while we're in it or
yeah,
tearing to the crash.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
afterwards and when we get to a certain part in our recovery that, oh, we have that power of energy to look back and connect. But actually, on that, because you're at a place where you can look back, what were those early whispers of, oh, I'm heading for a crash? Those signs that weren't recognizable back then, but recognizable in hindsight. Yeah, that
yeah.
burnout was that you were in it or it was creeping up, or yeah, that.
Yeah, there's
Mm,
so many exhaustion, brain fog, migraines that would last for days on end. I'd get these headaches that felt like someone was twisting a screwdriver into my brain, and the pain was coming all the way down my neck. But I kept pushing through. I'd take medication, and so
mhm.
all these things were just normal. And to be honest, I don't really know how much of it was related to perimenopause as well, and how
Yeah.
much was burnout. But,
Mm,
and at work, it was just always busy and there was never enough time. And I kept telling myself that it's just a busy period and it'll pass as soon as, and this, it never
mm,
came.
mm,
And I got so used to prioritizing work over everything else. So, a couple of
mm.
examples. In my first year at Salesforce, I tore a calf muscle, but really badly, a 6 centimeter medial tear. And
Oh,
I,
that's
I
huge.
was, yeah, and I
That's huge.
was on a business trip at the time, and I
Mm,
didn't take any time off. I literally hopped through airports in agony. I had the people in the airport wanting to help me with my luggage. I used the little cart thing in the airport because I couldn't
yeah.
walk properly. I never took any time off. I just kept going and kept traveling. And when my dad passed away, I found out while I was at work, of course, and I went
Yeah.
straight to a 4 hour customer workshop because I thought that it would be too career limiting for me not to be there, even though I could have skipped it and I was like a zombie through it anyway.
Yeah.
And I was taking sleeping tablets regularly, but still couldn't
Mm,
sleep. And I was always wired. My migraines, often triggered by alcohol, because I would binge drink, would last 3 to 5 days every single time. So I would just keep taking triptans, these
yeah.
prescription medication to get through.
Yeah.
And all that was before the pandemic. And then when that happened, everything
Mm.
just intensified, I think, for everybody. And it became very easy to withdraw and even normalize, easier to normalize that stress is just the price of being, dealing with life and what was going on at the time and being high performing in all of it.
Yeah, that normalizing, that push through the high stress, yeah, and you already mentioned that drive in your self-worth, your identity was through work. So being able to step back and prioritize, yeah, health or grief or anything like that wouldn't have been, our identity is such an important thing and such a we're
Work was
deeply.
always first.
Yeah, well, we're deeply wired. Culturally, we're wired
Yeah.
to first, but we're also biologically wired to belong. And so that if we get our sense of belonging and worth through our work identity, and I was the same,
Mm.
we are going to prioritize that over a lot from a biological perspective, but a cultural as an
Yes.
environmental, so many things. It's so
Yeah.
strong. Yeah. You mentioned there a few of the things you were doing to cope, because all of these things are just trying to get through, trying to deal with all that life brings us. The workload, you mentioned that, Salesforce was going through some big, massive changes and trying to keep up with that pace. Your dad passing away, that, and we just cope the best way we know how. And I know you've been so willing and open sharing about your already here, but elsewhere too, about the use of alcohol. And I know you're not alone. There's so many of us that turn to alcohol. I turn to food. And that's usually my sugar is my go-to.
I still do that sometimes.
I
That's my
know.
thing now. Yeah.
But the reality of alcohol, it's a big one for a lot of people. And I just wanted to pause just I suppose hear a little bit more of whatever you want to share about that experience of and any other coping things that you did, because we all are trying our best to cope, even if it's with things that end up not helping us. We're all human, right? But
Yeah.
alcohol's a big one for a lot of us. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It was, I used to say that my problem with alcohol is that I had no off switch, but I've reframed that and I say that it wasn't anything wrong with an off switch. It was a release valve. And it kind of
Oh.
helped me switch off when I didn't know how to rest any other way. And I'd grown up with alcohol around me. That was the answer to
Mm.
everything. So, you celebrate with alcohol, you commiserate with alcohol, you relax with alcohol, you get
Mm.
yourself ready to go out with alcohol. So it gave me a false sense of relaxation and connection as well. I think, with a lot of the deeper work, this whole feeling like I have to prove myself everywhere is something that probably, never really left me for a long time. And alcohol helps you, with Dutch courage and giving you that false confidence. But really,
Mm.
it was just numbing, and I know that now. But I wasn't an everyday drinker. I was a binge drinker. So I would drink most weekends, often to the point of blackout. And
Mm.
during the pandemic, it got worse. I would
Yeah.
binge on a Friday night, and then I'd wake up in tears on Saturday. Maybe I'd do it again on Saturday, but I'd hate myself all week. And then Friday night, I'd start doing it again. But
Mm.
when I first, it was during the pandemic that the whole burnout thing really, that I
Yeah, is that when it
realized.
happened for you? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and then I did some mental health first aid training, which was really good. And that was when I learned about comorbidity and how alcohol can make anxiety and depression worse. And they kind of feed each other. It's like feeding the
Mm.
monster. And that was kind of the turning point for me stopping
Ah,
drinking. It's about
mm.
2.5 years now since I quit drinking fully.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first year was probably about not drinking, and the next one was like what I call an emotional detox, where you
Yeah.
sort of face everything that you suppress for years and years and years.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so it was quite confronting going through that, but ultimately freeing. And without
Mm.
alcohol, I feel much clearer. I've slowly
Mm.
gained more confidence and have a real sense of freedom that I never really felt before. But it was like a trap, a constant trap. I was throwing myself into work and then drinking. And the only time I ever really took time off work was if I had drunk so much to black out that I couldn't function the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, yeah, where your body pushed you so far that you couldn't turn up with the alcohol. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. So much wisdom there. What you said about it was a release valve.
Mm.
I could really understand that vicariously, like that. Yeah, it was a way to be able to connect, it was a way to be able to relax, to, deal with that stress, that load that you were under. And so many people say that. And
Mm.
so then it traps you because as you found out in the mental health first day, which sounds like, yeah, a big turning point. No one come back there. But that was that learning, I suppose, the other side, although you were experiencing the other side of alcohol as well. But, yeah, it sounds like, and that's, yeah, what I wanted to come back to, because that point, because even though burnout, right, is a cumulative thing, it's not like all of a sudden we're burnt out, it's cumulative, but there's often this point that we reach, and maybe it's multiple points, but there's usually a moment or moments. I don't know, but there's yeah a turning point like you describe, and I don't know if you can speak to a little bit more about that turning point, the mental health first aid, because it sounds like that, and you're in the middle of the pandemic, that first year of the pandemic. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I think I was always an optimist to the point where it was almost annoying for some people. And I just felt that disappear. I just started really losing myself. And I was so cynical that I just didn't really I didn't you hear this expression, this term all the time that you don't really recognize yourself anymore. But I didn't because I don't like not being optimistic. And I was really cynical. And at first, I was really hard on myself, thinking, how did this happen to me? How did I let this get that bad?
Mm.
And then when I actually started, it was my doctor that told me I was feeling depressed. And my doctor said, you're suffering from burnout induced depression. And that was the first time we spoke about burnout. So it was already at the depression. And she said, if you don't take a proper break um, ASAP, it won't be good for you, won't be good for Salesforce, it won't be good for your future. So I thought this
Mm.
is when I really have to do something about that and make a plan. I like to make a plan for things. And
Mm.
and through all of that, I did lots of things. I continued with my doctor. I did all sorts of things. I wrote a plan for myself, and I decided that therapy was going to be helpful as well. So I did this thing. I did that for a while, and I did this thing called internal family systems.
Oh yeah, IFS. Yeah, I'm not trained in it personally, but
Yeah.
I'm familiar with like
Yes.
yeah, it's a good yeah. Anyway, I know
Yeah.
practitioners who use it.
Yeah, and I found that really helpful. And I think like a lot of people say with burnout, oh, I went to therapy and it didn't fix it. And I went to my doctor, it didn't fix it. But I think knowing that those are all different pieces of your own puzzle and you have to figure out how to put it together. So I think
Mm.
me taking control of how I was going to navigate my way out of it. One thing was like I thought, okay, I need to know how I got here because maybe that will help me figure out how to get back
Mm.
out again. So I Googled a lot and I read about the 12
Mm.
stages and mapped back my career journey, like I mentioned before. When I kind of understood how I got there, I thought, well, these are the things some of the behaviors I have to try and figure out to
Mm.
change because I can't go back to how I was.
Yeah.
So I need to figure out what do I want to be instead. And yeah, so
Mm.
I also started writing. I'd been writing little journal entries for a while, and I started doing things that became the blog later. But I also wrote. A few people said, "Oh, you should write a book." When I was talking about my some of my background, and so I started writing a book, but just for me, and it was really good. It was like unpacking my
Mm.
story and some of the difficult early years, and a bit like unpacking a really messy suitcase and then repacking it neatly so that I've got it all, it makes some sense in my head.
Puzzle
Yeah.
pieces coming
Yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
I was just trying to just unpack everything and make sense of it all before I could figure out
Mm.
how to put it together. And yeah, and the mental health first aid training obviously was another layer of understanding. I realized as well that burnout wasn't a personal failure; it was an inevitable outcome of years of pressure and self-neglect.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and I started recognizing things like people pleasing, over functioning, because workplace gets a lot of flack, rightly so, because our culture and how things are in the workplace just feed burnout problem.
Mhm.
But we can't just put it all on the workplaces. I think we have to look at how do we then manage that and not let it consume us,
Mm.
because if we don't do that, we can change jobs and it'll just
Mm.
follow us there. So yeah, so looking at patterns that I had about overfunctioning, the need to prove my worth and all of that sort of thing really
Mm.
helped me to move forward.
Yeah. God, so much wisdom again. This is why I love lived experience guests, and everyone has a story, even my guests who come on and work in the area or whatever. They usually have had a lived experience, but just focusing on that side because so much that you've learned through your journey that people listening to this are going to relate. Maybe they're not where you are in their journey, but it gives them hope and also direction. So thank you for sharing those things that you engaged in, and even that insight, go from burnout being a failure, because you were saying that there was a sense of shame and some criticalness around being in it, but then
Yeah.
through the work you did and lots of work connecting and all of that through your writing, journaling, therapy, everything, that you could come to that point that no, burnout was inevitable. And it's so
Yeah.
true. It's not, it doesn't have to be for everybody, but if we have these, what I like to, or I adopt from the literature, like these individual factors, things like people pleasing, perfectionism, striving, that achievement focus, identity caught up in work or whatever role that is burning us out.
Yeah.
It can even be parenthood. But,
Yeah.
and then coupled with workplaces and what you rightly said, that it can never be solely, it's a relational thing between
Yeah.
ourselves and the workplace. But those workplace factors as well, like, yeah, put that, it's a recipe for burnout. Yeah, like
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
not a person's fault, but it is their responsibility because no one else is going to be able to do the shift, the change. I don't like to
Yeah.
call it a fix. I like to, like you said, you needed to change things. You needed to change things that you could change,
Yeah.
so
And
that
we
it
can
doesn't
almost,
happen again.
yeah, we can almost like repurpose all
Repurpose.
of the good stuff that led us to burnout in the first place into um, focusing on how you want to live instead. And I think that's kind of what I did. My therapist even said to me in a session once, she said, "You've got this uncanny way of looking at life where if it throws you a torpedo, instead of going, oh, what am I going to do with it? You think, okay, well, it smashes to pieces, and you think, what are we going to make with this?"
Oh,
And so I guess that was the thing. At first, I was really hard on myself, and I thought, "This is how did this happen to me? This is I felt
mm,
like a failure." But then I thought, "No, I'm gonna understand this. I'm gonna learn about it, and I'm gonna
mm,
use the same energy that I used to
mm.
probably got me there in the first place to find my way out and plan my way out."
It's like, yeah, like I love that because it sort of highlights that some of those things that lead us into burnout are also strengths that, when applied
Yeah.
to a different area, like our health and well-being
Yes.
and how do we want to live and what's this going to look like from here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we all get sucked in by life, right? And before you know it, you've
Mm.
lost yourself.
The
So,
losing, yeah, when you
yeah.
mentioned that too. I'm just going to pause here for a moment to share something with you. If you'd like to keep up to date with what I'm working on in the world of midlife and burnout, I invite you to join my mailing list. It's where I share updates on the resources, events, and services I offer to help you navigate midlife stress, overwhelm, and burnout with more ease and clarity. As a thank you, you'll receive my free guided journal, Journaling as a Way Back to Yourself, a gentle, at your own pace, reflective practice to slow down, listen inward, and reconnect with what matters most. You'll also get a couple of extra resources to support you in your inbox after your journal arrives. You can sign up via the link in the show notes or at shannonaswales.com/subscribe. So now back to the episode. Hey, I do want to come back in the journey because you've mentioned it a couple of times, and for my midlife women out there, or even
Mm.
anybody really listening, so important because there will be a woman in your life, most likely. Um, with perimenopause, menopause, and even just midlife, because it's such a interesting stage of life with lots of things that we can be confronting, but particularly that hormonal, that or neuroendocrine, so hormonal and brain shift that happens to us. Now, again, it sounds like not at the time, but in retrospect. But yeah, tell us a little bit about midlife and perimenopause and how that all, what you've come to learn, how that's all kind of, yeah,
Yeah, I
part of
think
this burnout. Mm.
yeah, I think I maybe I touched on it a little bit. I think the peak of my burnout happened right in the midst of perimenopause, which I think it affected my resilience. So maybe if I hadn't been going through perimenopause, I might have been able to push through a bit
Yeah,
longer.
those strategies, the way you were dealing would have.
Yeah, I don't know. I will never understand that. But that, I'd always been strong, but that combination, hormones, exhaustion, the
Mm.
identity loss from being sucked in by life, it like really hit me. And then earlier this year I was made redundant after 14 years at Salesforce too. So now being on the other side of both the burnout and perimenopause, I'm like two
I,
2 years postmenopause.
that's right. I think when
Yeah.
we've chatted before, you shared that with me. And yeah, so you're postmenopausal now.
Yeah, so I feel like it's almost, yeah, I've got a clarity that I don't think I could have had without those experiences. So that's the benefit of it all, right? It brings this reckoning where you start asking yourself, what's all this for and who am I really? It's almost like I've spent a few years in a hurricane and I'm now
Mm.
sitting in the calm on the other side of it, looking back, thinking, whoa, what was that? But
Yeah, what a great visual and very well. Obviously, it fits because it fits your experience, but I think it fits so well. It is like a hurricane cyclone, and
yeah, yeah.
that you're sitting on that other side and seeing that clarity, a result of all the work you've done, all the shifting, shaping, changing. Finding yourself because it sounds like it's been a big inner journey as well. Like, yeah.
Yes, I spent decades striving and numbing as well without ever really pausing to consider what I wanted. I just, leaving school and leaving home at 16 and starting working, just following my nose. Burnout and sobriety and perimenopause, redundancy and everything, they all happened in a relatively short, number of years. And
Mm.
that's given me a full reset, not just of my career, but my whole life. And I see midlife now as like a reckoning, an awakening, and a
Yeah.
rebirth, I guess.
Me too, because so much of our journey, I mean, and I find this in everyone, there's some crossovers and similarities, and of course differences as well. But like the perimenopause, I believe was starting to happen when I hit, or at least because I had been on full contraception,
Oh, it was
some
the
sort
same.
of thing my whole life, and my husband finally got the snip, and what's the medical term? Anyway, he got the snip, so I could actually get off the contraception. So my body was very used to that. So I wonder if it was, that it wasn't necessarily perimenopause at that stage, but my body was going through a shift and a change, and when our hormones, especially that estrogen, that fluctuates and is dropping and doing all its thing through perimenopause, it lowers the scientific evidence there, lowers our resilience to stress. And so, yeah, put that in with a pandemic because mine was in the pandemic as well, and all those other things. It's just a hurricane, like you said. It's
Yeah.
but
Funny when you get out the other side of it, it's like, whoa, really?
yeah, I mean, I'm still in the peri, but it's well managed. Well, the symptoms that I was getting, they are, well, just they're going well. Like I'm not being disrupted, but on the other side of burnout as well, like there's that, yeah, that clarity with all that
Mm.
work that goes into it, and that's really proven too. The scientific research, those who get to the other side and maintain and don't go back, they have made these shifts, these changes. They've done the deep work. They've really researched and understood themselves. And yeah, that's like yourself on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, talking about the other side, I love to, for the audience and also again for me, because I've gotten to follow you and check you out. I remember first finding out about your work through your blog. And I was just like, oh my God, this was like what I was doing way back, but so much better and someone else is doing it. Not that, but it's just really rich. And anyway, I would love the audience to hear more about this other side and what you're doing now in your world. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was at Salesforce and when I hit my burnout experience, the hitting the wall experience, I, in my learning about burnout, I thought I can't be the only one that feels this way. And I became a passionate mental health advocate, particularly when it comes to burnout. And
Mm.
I was part of a small little group of us that formed an employee resource group called Mental Health Matters. And I got involved in anything mental health related that I could. I did the mental health first aid training, became an instructor so that I could spread that love a bit further. And I shared my burnout story as well and got a lot of great feedback about that. People felt seen. And that was
Mm.
kind of the beginning of everything. And because I was losing my passion for my day job, and I was developing this huge passion for wanting to help other people by sharing my experience,
Mm.
I just focused on that to get me through the last couple of years because I knew redundancies were on the table. And the last couple of years, I narrowly missed redundancy 5 times before it actually happened to me.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so I desperately wanted to leave, but I didn't want to leave because I might get made redundant. And sure enough, it happened in the end. So that was really good. And
Wow, the
just
survival to get through that. Like,
yeah. Oh,
mm,
and that's the thing, even not being made redundant, just sitting there wondering if you're going to be next is
mm,
quite hard. And I actually wanted it to happen by this stage. I'd been there 14 years. And then serendipitously,
mm.
about 2 weeks before my redundancy, I was awarded a Global Recognition Award at Salesforce Woman of Impact for my advocacy work. And that was great because I thought, you know what, I was going to just quietly leave with my redundancy and feel like completely unvalued. And it was really nice to be recognized for something that was about who I was, not just what I did. And that was so
Ooh.
nice. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to focus on this 100%. And I'm at a stage in my life now where I'm, pretty secure and I can afford to try this out.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so I just decided I'm going to focus on it 100%. And when I was in the thick of burnout, I was struggling with thinking that I had no skills, that I had nothing to offer, that I wasn't worth anything anymore. And it wasn't until I had the space, the headspace to really think about everything and get started with doing this, trying to do what I was doing within Salesforce, but more broadly,
Mm.
that I realized just how many skills I have from all my years of corporate, my lived experience, my mental health first aid training, all these things. And I thought, you know what, I can do all sorts of things. So I've started Nostos Nest, and the word Nostos
Yeah.
it means homecoming. It's an ancient Greek word. My husband is Greek, so there's a little bit of a connection there. But it's an ancient Greek word that means returning home after a long journey, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally as well. And nest is obviously a place of healing and nurturing and growing and
Mm.
safety. So that's what Nostos Nest is. And it started with the blog, but I'm also doing now a workplace service. So I want to take everything that I've learned that helps workplaces be more mentally healthy, and especially with psychological safety being a legal requirement now. And I want to do it in a way that helps smaller workplaces that don't have big HR teams and big budgets. So I can go in and do an assessment on how mentally healthy they are and then help them fill the gaps and work out, what do they need to do to get to them where they need to be. And
Mm.
then the life plan, so the framework that we used to use at Salesforce to grow and build the business.
Mm.
I use that as a way to get myself out of burnout as
Mm.
well. And I blended it with some other things. The
Mm.
Robin Sharma book, The 8 Hidden Habits of a Truly Rich Life. It's called The Wealth Money Can't Buy. And
Yeah.
so I've actually blended the Salesforce framework with
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
so that I can have a full and rich life. And
Yeah.
so I've shared that on Nostos Nest as in case other people want to use it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
That's
and yeah, I want to try and make as much available as possible
beautiful.
without it costing anybody anything, but I can provide coaching to help people with accountability and guiding them through it if they want as well.
Mm.
So those are the things that I've been doing. It's keeping me very
Yeah.
busy and I'm loving it.
I would imagine so. Oh, something that just jumps out to me, that choice that you've made to work with small businesses that don't have the backing of like, big, departments of HR or money and all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful and certainly important area,
Mm.
especially as a person who solely focuses on working with the individuals and not the organization, but there's such a need for people to go in and support, yeah, especially the smaller ones, because yeah, again, they
Yeah,
don't have
yeah,
the
yeah.
access
And I
to
was
all.
all in Salesforce, I was all doing business transformation, professional services, customer success, and helping
You know the
companies
yeah, you know.
transform with with with
Yeah.
with, it, with digital. So
Yeah. And that's it. That reminds me, the other thing that was landing for me and jumping out, just how, in the midst of that burnout and just where your brain was at and like, else have I got to give? I don't have any other
mm,
strengths or skills, but, through your process and having that space and seeing all of these skills, all these strengths you've gained from work and life
mm,
and going through this burnout as well, that you can give to others, and you are with Nostos Nest. And I mean, you shared that with me before the meeting, but yeah, hearing it again, I got goosebumps. Whenever anything really sort of connects spiritually, I feel it in my body in that very goosebumpy way. So
Yeah.
special and meaningful, and so that coming home, particularly, I think for some reason I feel like it's a midlife thing too, but maybe that's biased due to my own experience. But I feel like, yeah, I feel like a big part of a lot of people's burnout journey is that they're lost and they are disconnected. They're following, like you mentioned, and it was me too. I was just following what I thought I should, but I wasn't really connected with myself. I didn't even know that I needed to be like,
Mm.
and midlife, the burnout was the awakening,
Yeah.
and then,
It happens so slowly. You don't realize that you're disconnecting. You only realize when you
uh,
see how disconnected you are, that you
yeah,
just don't
yeah.
recognize yourself anymore.
So I love those words and what the nostos part means, the coming home to yourself, but that from a spiritual, like, yeah, that's why I think it was so goosey for me, is because I
Mm.
can
And
understand.
it's funny because I've had I started with the blog, and then a couple of people I've shared it with have said, "Oh, that might not resonate with corporate." And at first I second guessed it, and I thought, you know what? No, it actually is just means something to me. It's and I'm not gonna twist and shake myself to fit anymore. Just not gonna do it. So I'm just
Well
gonna
done,
keep it
you.
as it is.
Yeah, well done, you. Staying true to yourself and what feels
Yeah.
right for you. Because, yeah, well, maybe corporate world can do with actually coming from a different space, something a little bit more
Recognize the
emotive
human. Yeah.
and human
Yeah,
and
put the
connect.
human at the center of everything. Because without humanness, without people, the workplaces don't actually exist. So
I want to pause here and offer something deeply personal for anyone feeling depleted or stuck in stress, overwhelm, or burnout. My book, Nothing Left to Give, A Psychologist's Path Back from Burnout, shares my real life story of hitting a wall in 2021. Burnout, compassion fatigue, and resurging mental health struggles that forced me to leave my work and rebuild from the ground up. It's not just a memoir, it's filled with practical tools and reflections to guide you towards rest, reclaim your sense of self, and resist that pressure of constant caring going outwards, perfectionism, people pleasing, toxic independence, all of that. You can find this book both in ebook and paperback via Amazon, or just head to the show notes for the link, or shannonaswales.com/burnout-book for the links. And now let's get back to the episode. Exactly. Now you mentioned, and I feel I just wanted to give space to, because you've got the wisdom around this, just speaking a little bit to the, if you don't mind, to the psychosocial hazards and, I don't know, just bringing a little bit of life to that. I know it could be a whole episode, and I'm kind of putting you on a spot here, but just for the listeners who maybe have heard about it, especially for us Australian viewers, but for those around the world as well, it could just be great to have that bit of wisdom. Okay, what are we talking about when we're talking about psychosocial safety at work, and what that looks like? Yeah.
yeah, so we have the Fair Work Act in Australia, which is the rules that everyone has to follow if you're employing people, basically. And there's always been a health and safety, like a physical workplace safety laws, but they've just got a lot more strict around psychological safety, so mental health and things like that. So now it is actually a legal requirement to take proactive steps to minimize the risk of psychological harm to employees. And I think we're the only country in the world that is that strict, where if somebody experiences bullying at work, for example, and
Mhm.
they raise it with their employer and they don't do anything, number one, they have to be having measures in place to kind of avoid that kind of thing happening in the first place. But they
Mhm.
also need to be taking action if it gets reported. So if someone goes and puts in a claim because they've had to take work off, stress leave,
Mhm.
that have to take time off work, and they put in a claim for it, then it could get investigated. And then
Mhm.
if the employer is found to not have been taking appropriate action
Mhm.
to reduce the risk or to address the issue, then they could be fined. And I think the minimum is like even I think it can be around even just not just the employer, the company, but the individual manager as well.
Oh,
And it
wow.
can be up in, depending on the situation, it can be in the millions of dollars, or it could be like
Mm,
$100,000 for a small business.
yeah.
And that could be enough to close a business for a small business. So
Mm,
yeah, it's something that they have to take action. And I think one thing that's a bit scary is that when you first register for a business,
mm,
it's kind of assumed that you will follow the laws of Australia, right?
yeah.
There's
Yep.
no memo that everyone got saying the law has now changed and it's more strict. Nobody, so
No.
and I didn't get the memo, won't be a good enough
Mm.
excuse either. So I think a lot of people are busy. They don't have HR teams, they don't have,
Yeah.
health and safety teams, and they might not know even that they need to do
Yeah.
this. So it's a big risk for a lot of companies, but they should care about their employees as well. But it's
Mm.
definitely a risk for them.
Yeah, I've thought about that too, Michelle, as well. Like a feeling on the organization side, all for the psychosocial safety laws, think it's great, but that we have this big shift, big change, and there's no education or, I mean, I know it's there that the
Yeah, but
businesses
you have
can
to go.
go and,
You have to go find it. Nobody is going to
yeah,
send you an email saying, "Hey, did you know you better check this out?" I mean, you
yeah,
can get yourself on mailing lists and things, and
yeah,
but I know what it's like. You probably get all these emails about all
yeah.
sorts of things that get lost in your inbox, and
Yeah.
you
And
know,
I think, managers and owners, business owners, they're all human as well. And like us are carrying our own stuff that, like perfectionism or people pleasing or striving, identity. But they're in those positions of power, but they again don't have the knowledge or wisdom, of even thinking about this. And it's just, yeah, it's an interesting space. And it's going to be such a big learning curveball for a lot, and it might end up, being a financial learning curveball for some too, but a necessary change. I'm definitely not disagreeing with that. I can just understand the humanness on all sides
Mm,
of it as you do too. But
yeah,
thank you for sharing a little bit more about what we're talking about here with those psychosocial safety,
yeah,
and not just physical safety, because I actually remember when that came in. My dad's a business, oh, he's retired now, but he's a business owner. And I remember the dad talking about some changes and the physical health and safety. Well, I think health and safety just
yeah,
literally coming in, and what he needed to now do. Small business owner as well. I think he had 5 employees, maybe max at a time. But yeah, like, and I was a pretty attuned kid, and I could tell the stress. Not that I had a name for it, because I didn't know what that was.
mm,
And I think Dad, whenever he talked about stress, was there's no such thing as stress. I'm like,
yeah. But it's
okay,
not just helping people when they're already broken. It's trying to avoid them getting broken in the
prevention.
first
Well,
place. So not
well,
having
yeah.
cables lying around on the floor and
Yeah,
things
because it
like
was
that. So
that preventative, but then
yes,
also, and I think that's when workers' compensation and whatever it's called, I've forgotten what it's called, work cover now, but came in as well as, okay, if something does happen, what the appropriate response and the support, and
yeah,
but then also the prevention, because that's what it's about. We want to prevent the psychological injuries, the physical, the social injuries. So then we don't get to this place of someone needing to be off work, and then employer, it comes back on them as well. Like burnout alone, I forgot, they've done the economic studies, costs in the billions, I think, or millions at least, worldwide economically. And that's why the World Health Organization considers it, they're not calling it a pandemic, but it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to. It costs, well, obviously costs the individual a lot,
mm.
but also costs companies, small businesses, and economies. Yeah. Mm.
Insurance claims for mental health claims are rising as well.
Rising.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So prevention rather than cure
yeah,
will definitely, and that's why the psychosocial hazard laws are coming in to hopefully educate and prevent. So we
yeah,
don't have this, what we currently have. Yeah. And I think Australia has one of the, and this is really sad, but one of the highest rates of burnout as well across the world.
yeah, yes,
Like,
that too.
says something about what might be going on in individually, but also workplaces. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Well, I feel like, I mean, like everyone, I feel like I'm always possibly missing parts of the story. And I mean, when something goes on for so long as well, of course we would, but I feel like we've gained so much from hearing elements of your story and where you are now too on the other side. And I was just wondering, Michelle, as a bit of a second last finisher, just out there to anyone listening, particularly the midlife burnt out woman, but anyone, what words of wisdom or things you'd like to share for her or them? Yeah. If there's anything
Yeah.
on your
Okay.
mind.
And this is a common question, I think, for people, what advice would I give on this? I would say you don't have to burn down your life to start again. You can just start small. Like if you're in the thick of it,
Mm,
it can be a bit overwhelming. So admitting that you're not okay and taking that first step, whether it's, saying no, talking to someone, or just resting, but just doing something and recognizing it, and know that you're not weak for being tired. You're just human. It takes real strength and courage to admit that you need help and take the action. And yeah, you're a whole person outside of your job, your family, and the roles that you play. So you have to give yourself permission and space. And I think, the path home to yourself really starts the minute you decide to stop abandoning your own needs. And then once you've done that, when you feel ready, think about what you want to be instead and take ownership of your life, get clear on your vision for yourself and what your values are, and make a plan to get there and how to live the way that you want to live.
Oh, what brilliant. Yeah, no, you say a thing. I think it's this is beautiful. And I'm going to leave this, of course, in the show notes as well. But a shout out to like your business, where to find you, like find your blog, which I absolutely adore, and is such a vital resource out there for anyone experiencing burnout, or maybe even the managers, employers, like to get an insight, as well, anybody. But like how, and all the other things you're doing with workplaces and individual coaching. Yeah. Where do they find you, Michelle?
My website is nostosnest.com. So NOSTOSNEST, nostosnest.com. And everything is there pretty much. But I'm also on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on LinkedIn, Michelle Stalimeros on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm on all of them. I'm trying to work out. I have to watch myself still because I'm trying to work out all the different social platforms, but I'll narrow it down eventually.
Yeah, I hear you. I've spread myself too, and I'm like, yeah.
Just can't help. You just can't help it, right? And that's something I have to. I've given myself a whole day off tomorrow because I'm
Mhm.
enjoying it as well. So it's hard to, but I know
I know
I
what you mean.
recognize the patterns. When you're
Yeah.
starting to do it again, I think, okay, no, I have to stop.
Yeah, because even too much of a good thing, right? And not to say like, I mean, your work before, good thing, but we just to remember to have some off time or time away from the work. I know what you mean because I find I get really hyper focused on things I'm interested in and I can lose all sight of it.
And
Like,
there's so much to learn as
I know,
well. Just constant
and
learning.
I love it. I'm not learning now because the degree I was doing said I had to learn this, that, the other. I mean, most of the stuff I learned in psychology was interesting anyway, because I love humans. I love
Yeah.
understanding humans. And so psychology gave me that route. But, some stuff you didn't, but want to learn. But yeah, but when I'm interested, yeah, it really hooks me. Yeah, even things that are interesting or fun, we need some, yeah, downtime or other time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually neglect my relationships, so that's the one that I'm like, okay, need some connection time,
Yeah.
and yeah, need to get out of this and people a little bit. Well, there was something. Oh, I was just going to say too, and join your mailing list because I'm on your mailing
Oh,
list.
yes,
It's
of
a
course. Yeah, my mailing list, I
I'll
do
leave a link to.
quarterly updates on my progress because it's also an interesting thing to see how I go with this journey of
Hmm.
since redundancy and trying to do my own thing. So I do quarterly updates on that, but I do weekly blog posts every Monday. And when you join my mailing list, I've put together a really detailed guide on how I do that life planning framework. And
Yeah.
with a template, comes with a template and an example, my example as well, so that you get that when you join my
Oh,
mailing list as well.
beautiful. Because I find that really handy personally for me as a reminder to stay connected with your work because I find it so valuable. So seeing you pop up, in my mailing, even if I don't get to that blog that week, but it just reminds me of you and the vital resources that you provide. So that's
Yeah.
how I personally when I connect with someone and the work that they do and the resources, I wish you were there when I was going through it.
Yeah, I wanted to feel like when I was searching for things, when I was struggling,
Mm,
every blog that I came across had pop-ups and ads all the way through it, and it would really bug me. So that's one thing I have vowed, never to put ads on my blog. I want
mm,
it to feel like a place of, Nostos Nest, a place where you can just feel like I'm there walking alongside you. Because I don't
mm.
have all the answers. We're all a constant work in
Oh,
progress.
yeah.
But I'm sharing, I might be further along the journey, or I might have had, different experiences. And I want it to be a place where people feel seen, understood, hopeful. It keeps me accountable
Yeah.
as well. Everything I write, I want it to be this is what I felt and this is how I'm moving forward.
Mm,
So I'll always make sure there's that angle. It's never just a vent. Yeah,
mhm.
so I want to make sure that anyone who reads my blog feels inspired and hopeful as well, but
Yeah.
seen.
But
Mm,
seeing, yes.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on and being so willing to share your story, your experiences of burnout and learnings and wisdom, and what you're doing in the world now to help and like really giving back. But that's where your heart, your soul is led now
Read my
and will
heart. Yes,
always
good.
be. And you have so much strength that you're taking from the other half of your life, that comes into that as well. So it's really beautiful. But yeah, I just want to express my appreciation and thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're
It's
more than
really an
welcome.
honor.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And like most guests, I always say, like, especially with any feedback from guests, wanting to maybe hear more or stuff like, and I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm just going to say, welcome back anytime as well,
Yeah,
especially if people are keen and interested in hearing more about, yeah, aspects of your experience. But anyway, I just wanted to keep that
for
out there.
sure. I even have the little chat thing on my website too. So I want to be able to help people as much as I possibly can without them having to pay for anything. I'm not a therapist or a doctor or anything like that, but if anything, me just sharing my journey that can be helpful for
Mm.
someone, I want to do as
Mhm.
much as I can because sometimes, you know, help is not free. And I want to try and do as much as I can for free as well.
That's so giving. Yeah, it's trying to make it accessible for everybody. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks for listening to Midlife Reclaimed. I hope today's conversation has reminded you that you are not alone and that change is possible even in the busiest seasons of life. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, or review the podcast and share it with another midlife woman who might need it. For more resources on navigating midlife stress, overwhelm, and burnout, along with reflective writing prompts and community connection, visit shannonaswales.com. You can also watch full episodes on YouTube at Midlife Reclaimed. Remember, you have permission to slow down, to rest, and to reclaim what matters most. See you again soon.